Welcome to Madame Raven's. This way to the library. She's been expecting you.
Hello, my darlings. I was asked for some Clark Ashton Smith, and so I'm bringing it to you today with the bronze image. It was a small bronze image of the god Ganesh, the elephant-headed, who is the Hindu deity of wisdom, and it stood on my writing desk. I had picked it up at an auction. It having formed part of a large collection which the owner, owing to financial embarrassment, had been compelled to sell. The price was ridiculously low, there being no competitor, and I left thinking that I had made a bargain. The image was of Benares workmanship, and Allah alone knew how old. Also, it was just the size for a paperweight, and quite appropriate. Holden dropped in about a week later. He's an old friend of mine. A grave, reticent sort of man. We had conversed some time when he suddenly caught sight of the image, and starting violently cried out in amazement. "Where did you get the Ganesh, Lane?" he asked. I told him. "The last time I saw that image," he said, "was in Benares." "I was not aware of your previous acquaintance with my paperweight," I said, looking at him. I saw that he was deeply absorbed in thought. "Well," he said finally, "I see that you are anxiously awaiting the story." He then proceeded to tell it as follows. "While at Calcutta 2 years ago, I was employed by a certain firm whose name I would prefer not to mention. I was set up to Benares to negotiate with the Bengali merchant, one Lajiri Chatterjee. It was important that these negotiations be kept secret, at least for some time, and because of my previous experience with natives and my general knowledge of India, I was chosen for the work. So I went up to Benares with full instructions and certain papers hidden securely in an inner pocket, which was to be handed over to Lajij Chatterjee. My identity, it seemed it best to conceal. So it was not in the person of Albert Holden that I reached Benares, but I stepped off the train as Fulsi Lal, and to all outward appearances, a bamboo of the deepest dye. A bamboo is an indigenous production. He belongs exclusively to India. There is nothing resembling him in all the world. From his spectacles to his English, which last is truly marvelous, he is individual. How the sons of Shaitan, who was representing a Central Indian Raja, a gentleman much interested in my negotiations with Lalji, discovered my identity, I do not pretend to know, but it is in fact that he did. When I arrived at Benares and stepped out of a third-class carriage into the teeming, seething station, I discovered a blue-turbaned, side-whiskers Rajput at my elbow, whose general description tallied essentially with that of a man whom I have been warned to avoid, namely the agent of Bhagwan Dios, the Central Indian Raja. Endeavors to lose this man in the crowd were in vain. It was not until I had traversed half the city of Benares and ended up eventually in the monkey temple that I lost sight of the blue turban and the side whiskers. I thanked Allah devoutly, emerged at the rear entrance, followed by all the monkeys in the neighborhood who evinced a most sociable disposition, and set off towards the Ganges. Near the burning ghats, I again met Bhagwan, Dio's representative. We exchanged glances of mutual distrust. Once more I tried to shake my tenacious follower. It was his mission, I know, to keep the papers which I carried from reaching Lajish, for certain reasons into which I cannot enter here. Bhagwan Deos did not wish this, and to this end he had sent his agent to Benares. This man, I was aware, would not scruple at anything. He would kill me if necessary to gain possession of the papers. About midday he was joined by another Rajput, and intuition told me that several more of these gentry probably lurked in the neighborhood of Lagi's house, with instructions to prevent a certain specific bamboo from entering. So for a time I abandoned hope of reaching Bengali, and entered a khan, sat down to think. The outcome of this was that Lajish Chatterjee shortly afterwards received a letter instructing him to be at the Golden Temple at 9 precisely the following morning. There he would receive some important papers from a Moslem horse merchant. At the appointed time he arrived. I'd been waiting in the person of the aforementioned merchant about half an hour, and the local priests were getting suspicious. I had begun to fear that he had not received my letter, or that some accident had occurred, when Lalji Chatterjee, a sleek, smiling, clean-shaven Bengali, entered, and looking about him sharply, at length perceived me. He came over and we exchanged greetings. "What a disguise, Sahib," he said. "You're a perfect horse-trader. The very odor of several sari I seem to emanate from you. Truly, I should never have suspected. And you have the papers? Ah, that is good. Now Bagwadion's emissaries can wait in vain. They have been hanging about my house for the last 3 days, following me everywhere and making great nuisance of themselves. It was with the utmost difficulty that I this morning evaded their surveillance. But I know Benares like a book. Her tangled streets are an open page, and somewhere near Manikaranika Ghat, 2 Rajputs are doubtless at this moment calling down curses on all Bengalis." He laughed heartily, and I was about to pull the papers from my inner pocket when 3 men entered hastily, and seeing us stopped. In one of them I recognized Bakwan's Dio's agent. The other 2 I had not heretofore seen. They looked at us keenly, then about the temple in a furtive manner. The priests had disappeared. We were alone, and I felt a bit uneasy as to what would happen. The Rajputs were looking ugly, and I saw that they were armed. I had unfortunately left my revolver at the khan, and was without weapons. Laji was also unarmed. The 3 men began to edge towards us in a casual manner, and sought, though they doubtlessly knew that we were afraid of their identity, to appear oblivious to our presence, and totally without intentions towards us. At last the Rajah's agent drew a revolver, and advanced to within steps, leveled it at my direction. His 2 companions stood just behind him in case he should need assistance. "Sahib," he said, "you have in your possession certain documents which I have been ordered to secure. I request that you hand them over to me. If you do not—" His words were interrupted by the entrance of a priest. He dropped the revolver for a moment and hesitated. In that moment I looked about for some weapon and perceived a small bronze image of Ganesh in a niche at the temple wall, snatched it up and hurled it straight at the Rajput's head. There was a dull impact, a shriek, and image that Rajput struck the ground together, the latter with a crushed skull. There's very little more to tell. The other Rajputs, upon perceiving the fall of their leader, rushed from the temple, and Lalji and myself followed closely upon their heels. In the resultant confusion, we made our escape, and did not pause until we had reached the Ghats. There, after a hasty consultation, we parted, Laji and the papers leaving shortly for Cawnpore, where it was intention to hide for some time, and myself having resumed the bamboo disguise for Calcutta. Bagua Dios, I believe, used all his influence to keep the affair quiet. The death of his agent set down officially as an accident, and attracted but little attention. The bra's image which you possess is the same that crushed the skull of the Raja's agent. So quoth this raven. Thank you for stopping by, my darlings. It means so much. I so enjoy telling these stories for you. And here are some of my marvelous supporters. Please, if you haven't subscribed, consider doing so. If you give this video a like, it would help me out ever so much. Thank you, and have a lovely, lovely day.